fire lookout tower stood alone above nearly 2 million acres of forest, balanced on the highest ridge in the northern Rocky Mountains. From the observation deck, I could see endless waves of pine trees stretching to every horizon, broken only by distant mountains fading into blue haze. It was beautiful in the kind of way that made you feel incredibly small. I had accepted the job because I wanted silence. 6 months earlier, my life had completely fallen apart. My engagement ended after 7 years. I quit a corporate job that made me miserable. My father died unexpectedly from a heart attack. Everything around me had become loud. Phones, traffic, people asking questions I didn't want to answer. When I saw an opening for a seasonal fire lookout with the U.S. Forest Service, it sounded perfect. For months, one tower, almost no human contact. Exactly what I needed. At least, that's what I believed. The tower itself looked older than I expected. Nearly 100 feet above the rocky ridge, supported by thick steel beams bolted directly into the mountain. It had survived countless winters that should have destroyed it decades ago. A narrow staircase spiraled upward through open air. The cabin at the top barely looked large enough for one person to live in. Inside, there was a single bed, a small propane stove, shelves filled with old maps, weather instruments, binoculars, and one large emergency radio mounted permanently to the communications desk. That radio immediately caught my attention. It looked ancient, far older than the rest of the equipment. Unlike the modern digital radio beside it, this one had large analog dials, faded labels, and scratches covering nearly every surface. Someone had obviously used it for years. My supervisor, Mark Henderson, noticed me staring. "Don't worry about that one," he said while signing paperwork. "We stopped using it a long time ago." "Broken?" I asked. Mark hesitated. "Something like that." He never explained further. Instead, he spent the next hour showing me how to identify smoke columns, report weather conditions, monitor lightning strikes, and complete the hourly observation logs. Everything felt straightforward, almost boring. Exactly the kind of quiet routine I wanted. Until we reached the communications desk. Mark placed a small brass key beside the radio. "This unlocks the maintenance cabinet." I nodded. He didn't move. Instead, he looked directly at me. "There is one rule." His voice had changed. It sounded heavier, more serious than before. "If that radio ever turns on," he pointed toward the old analog unit, "don't answer it." I laughed. He didn't. "I'm serious. It shouldn't even have power. It isn't connected to anything." I looked behind the desk. Sure enough, the power cable had been cut years ago. Only frayed wires remained. "So if it ever starts talking," Mark continued, "walk outside. Turn off your flashlight. Wait exactly 5 minutes. And whatever you hear, don't respond." I stared at him. "Is this some kind of initiation joke?" He slowly shook his head. "No." Then he picked up his backpack. "I've worked these mountains for 23 years. I've only heard it once." He opened the cabin door. "I hope you never do." By 4 in the afternoon, he disappeared down the staircase. His truck became smaller and smaller until it vanished beneath the trees. Then, nothing. No engines. No people. No voices. Just wind moving through millions of pine needles. For the first time in years, I was completely alone. The first 2 days were almost peaceful. Every morning began the same way. Coffee, weather report, smoke survey, wildlife observations. At sunset, I completed the final report before settling into the quiet rhythm of mountain nights. The forest never became completely silent. Owls called from distant ridges. Branches creaked. Wind hummed around the tower. Occasionally elk wandered through the valleys below. Everything felt normal, natural, safe. The third night changed everything. At exactly 11:47 p.m., the old radio clicked. Not loudly, just click. I froze. Slowly, I looked toward the communications desk. The analog radio glowed faintly. This power indicator, dead for years, had turned green. Then static filled the cabin. Soft, almost gentle. I remembered Mark's warning immediately. Don't answer. The static lasted nearly 15 seconds. Then a man's voice spoke. Calm. Professional. This is emergency dispatch. We have a wildfire fatality to report. I frowned. That made no sense. There were no active fires within 200 miles. The voice continued. Victim identified. Pause. Paper shuffled somewhere on the other end. Then, Michael Carter. My heart skipped. Michael Carter. I knew him. He was another seasonal fire lookout stationed nearly 40 miles west of me. I had met him during orientation. He couldn't be dead. I had spoken to him yesterday morning. The transmission ended. The radio clicked off. Silence returned. I looked at the clock. 11:48 p.m. For nearly an hour I sat there, convincing myself I'd imagined everything. Maybe stress, maybe fatigue, maybe some kind of electrical interference. Eventually I went to bed. The next morning, at 11:52 a.m., the Forest Service called my modern radio. Daniel! The dispatcher's voice sounded shaken. We lost contact with Michael Carter last night. My stomach tightened. She continued quietly. They found him this morning. He died in a wildfire. Couldn't breathe. There hadn't been any wildfire. Not last night. Not anywhere. Then she added the sentence that made my blood run cold. The fire started at exactly. A brief pause. 11:47 p.m. I spent the next hour convincing myself it had all been a coincidence. It had to be. Forest fires happened. People died. Dispatchers made calls. Maybe I'd misheard the time. Maybe my exhausted brain had connected unrelated events. There had to be a rational explanation. There always was. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. The rest of the day passed in complete silence. Every hour, I completed the required lookout reports. Visibility, humidity, temperature, wind direction, smoke observations. Everything appeared perfectly normal. Not a single column of smoke rose anywhere across the forest. No aircraft, no emergency crews. Nothing suggested that a ranger had died less than 24 hours earlier. The mountains looked almost peaceful. That somehow made everything worse. Around sunset, another fire lookout contacted me over the modern radio. Tower 7, this is Tower 4. His voice sounded tired. You hear about Mike? I pressed the transmit button. Yeah. There was a long pause. They're saying lightning. Another pause. But, he lowered his voice. He called dispatch 3 times before they lost contact. What did he say? Silence. Then, he kept asking why dispatch already knew he was dead. The transmission ended before I could ask another question. I stared at the radio for several seconds. Maybe grief made people say strange things. Maybe panic. Maybe he'd been injured. Hallucinating. Anything made more sense than what I'd heard the previous night. Just before midnight, I made coffee. Not because I wanted it. Because I didn't want to sleep. The cabin felt different now. Smaller. Every creak of the old wooden walls pulled my attention away from the windows. Every gust of wind sounded almost intentional. I kept checking the clock. 11:39 p.m. 11:42 p.m. 11:45 p.m. My heartbeat grew louder with every passing minute. At exactly 11:47 p.m., the old analog radio clicked. Once, just like the night before. The green power light slowly illuminated. Static filled the room. I didn't move. I remembered every word Mark had told me. Walk outside. Turn off your flashlight. Wait 5 minutes. But curiosity rooted me to the floor. The static lasted longer this time. Nearly 30 seconds. Then the same calm dispatcher returned. This is emergency dispatch. We have another fatality to report. Paper shuffled softly. Victim identified. Pause. Emily Ross. I frowned immediately. Emily wasn't a ranger. She worked at the small weather station nearly 30 miles south of my tower. I'd spoken with her over the radio during orientation week. She couldn't possibly. The dispatcher continued. Time of death. Another pause. 11:47 p.m. tomorrow. Tomorrow. Not today. Tomorrow. My stomach tightened. I looked at the digital clock beside the weather instruments. 11:48 p.m. The transmission ended. Again. Silence. This time, I wasn't staying quiet. I grabbed the modern radio immediately. Dispatch, this is Tower 12. No response. I tried again. Still nothing. Finally, another operator answered. This is Regional Dispatch. Her voice sounded completely different. Professional. Alert. Normal. I asked the question carefully. Can you contact Emily Ross at Weather Station 9? There was a brief pause. Stand by. Nearly 2 minutes passed. Then, we just spoke with her. Everything okay? I forced a laugh. Yeah. Just checking. The dispatcher sounded confused. She's finishing paperwork. Said she'll head to bed in about 20 minutes. I thanked her and ended the call. Emily was alive. Exactly as she should have been. Which meant the old radio had predicted another death. I barely slept. The following morning, I considered driving down the mountain myself. Warn her. Tell her not to leave the station. Tell her anything. Except, how do you explain that? A radio without electricity told me you're going to die tonight. No sane person would believe it. I wasn't even sure I believed it. At noon, I finally contacted Weather Station 9. Emily answered herself. She sounded cheerful. You okay up there? Yeah. I hesitated. Listen, I know this sounds strange. She laughed. Forest loneliness already getting to you? I smiled weakly. Maybe. Just. Be careful tonight. There was a short silence. Then she answered softly. I will. The rest of the afternoon dragged painfully. Every hour felt longer than the last. I couldn't focus on lookout duties. My binoculars remained pointed toward the weather station far beyond the southern ridges. Obviously, I couldn't actually see it, but I kept looking anyway, as though staring hard enough might somehow change what was coming. At 11:46 p.m., I sat beside the modern radio. 1 minute, that's all. If nothing happened, I'd finally convinced myself this was all coincidence. The old analog radio stayed silent. 11:47 p.m. Nothing. 11:48 p.m. Still nothing. Relief washed over me. Maybe it had ended. Maybe the modern radio suddenly exploded with static. Not the old one. The modern one. Someone screamed. Not a frightened scream. A scream of pure pain. Then Emily's voice broke through. Dispatch! Please! It's inside the tower. Gunfire echoed in the background. The transmission cut out. At 11:52 p.m., Regional Dispatch contacted every fire lookout in the district. Their voices trembled. Weather Station 9 has stopped responding. Emergency crews were already en route. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Then another ranger quietly asked, What time? The dispatcher answered, 11:47 p.m. I slowly turned toward the old analog radio. The green light had already gone dark, but scratched into the dust on top of it, where there had been nothing before, were 3 words, See you tomorrow. I didn't sleep, not even for a minute. The words scratched into the dust remained burned into my mind. See you tomorrow. I wiped them away with my sleeve. Immediately, the dust smeared across the metal casing. The message disappeared for exactly 2 seconds. Then, slowly, letter by letter, the words reappeared. No hand carved them. No hidden mechanism revealed them. The dust simply moved on its own, as though invisible fingers were writing. I backed away from the communications desk. For the first time since arriving at the tower, I genuinely considered abandoning my post. The sun finally rose at 5:48 a.m. Morning usually made everything feel smaller, less frightening. Not today. The forest looked exactly the same as it had every other morning. Thousands of pine trees stretching endlessly beneath a cloudless sky. Nothing moved except the wind. No smoke. No helicopters. No emergency vehicles. No sign that another person had supposedly died only hours earlier. At 7:15 a.m., regional dispatch contacted every lookout tower. The operator sounded exhausted. Weather Station 9 personnel have been declared missing. Missing? I frowned. The previous night, Emily had screamed over the radio. Now she was only missing. I grabbed my notebook. Wasn't there a confirmed fatality? Silence. The dispatcher hesitated. What fatality? My stomach tightened. The weather station. The emergency call. The woman inside. Another long pause. Finally she answered. Tower 12. I think you've misunderstood something. I felt cold. What do you mean? There hasn't been an active weather station on that mountain since 1994. I stopped writing. What? It burned down 32 years ago. I laughed. Actually laughed. Not because anything was funny. Because my brain refused to accept what I just heard. No. I talked to Emily yesterday. You spoke with who? Emily Ross. The dispatcher searched something. Keyboard clicks echoed through the radio. Then, I'm sorry. We have no employee named Emily Ross. Every muscle in my body locked. I spoke to her. Yesterday. Over this radio. The dispatcher remained silent. Finally she asked gently, Daniel, are you feeling all right? I ended the transmission without answering. For nearly 20 minutes I stood perfectly still inside the tower. Then I grabbed the employee directory. Every seasonal worker in the district appeared alphabetically. Fire lookouts, maintenance crews, pilots, rangers. Nobody named Emily Ross. Not even archived personnel. Nothing. Maybe she'd worked for another agency. The National Weather Service. I searched the emergency contact binder. Nothing. No Emily. No Weather Station 9. Not a single reference. It was as though neither had ever existed. I opened my laptop. The satellite internet connection barely functioned, but eventually I managed to search federal records. Weather Station 9. No results. I tried different spellings. Nothing. Finally, I searched the exact coordinates I'd remembered seeing on her paperwork during orientation. The map loaded slowly. The location existed, but according to every official record, it was simply labeled Burn Scar Area. No buildings, no roads, nothing. My hands began shaking. I remembered her voice perfectly, her laugh, the way she joked about surviving 4 months alone, the blue coffee mug sitting beside her radio. How could I remember details about someone who apparently never existed? By noon, I couldn't take it anymore. Against protocol, I climbed down from the tower. The old Forest Service truck started on the second attempt. I headed south toward the coordinates where the weather station should have been. The drive took almost 2 hours. Gravel roads became dirt. Dirt became narrow logging trails. Eventually, even those disappeared. I continued on foot. The GPS confirmed I had arrived. This was the location. I expected at least ruins. A foundation. Burned timbers. Anything. Instead, there was only an empty clearing. Grass. Wildflowers. Young pine trees. No sign that a building had ever stood there. Nature had completely reclaimed the land. Something caught my eye near the center of the clearing. A rusted weather vane. Half buried beneath moss. I walked toward it. The metal had melted slightly, like it had survived an intense fire. Beside it lay a small bronze plaque. Most of the lettering had faded. Only a few words remained readable. Weather observation site. Destroyed. June 18th, 1994. I stared at the date. 32 years. Not yesterday. Not last week. 32 years. Then, something moved behind me. I spun around. Nothing. Only trees. Crunch. A branch snapped. Much closer this time. Somebody was walking through the forest. Slowly. Deliberately. The footsteps stopped whenever I stopped moving. They started again whenever I walked. I called out. Who's there? No answer. The forest suddenly felt impossibly quiet. No birds. No wind. Nothing. Just those footsteps. Keeping pace. Always behind me. Never close enough to see. I reached the truck and locked the doors immediately. The moment the engine started, the footsteps stopped. I looked through every mirror. Nobody. I drove back toward the tower without speaking another word. The climb back up the fire lookout stairs felt longer than usual. When I finally unlocked the cabin door, everything inside looked normal. Coffee cup, maps, notebook, binoculars. Then I noticed something sitting on my desk. A blue ceramic coffee mug, still warm. Printed across the side were the words, Weather Station 9, and written beneath it in black marker were 5 words. Thanks for calling yesterday, Daniel. I didn't touch the mug. For nearly 5 minutes, I simply stood in the doorway staring at it. Steam still curled lazily from the coffee. It wasn't warm. It was fresh. Someone had poured it only minutes ago. My truck had been locked. The tower door had been locked. There was only one staircase leading to the cabin. Nobody could have entered without passing me. Yet there it was. A blue ceramic mug from a weather station that, according to every official record, had burned down 32 years earlier. My first instinct was to throw it out the window. Instead, I grabbed a pen and carefully nudged the mug. It slid across the desk. The coffee rippled. Real liquid. Real heat. Nothing supernatural about it. Except, there was lipstick on the rim. Faint pink mark. Emily had been drinking from it. I remembered noticing that exact lipstick stain during our radio conversation. A tiny detail my brain shouldn't have remembered. Unless she had really existed. I picked up the mug with both hands. It was almost too hot to hold. The smell of fresh black coffee filled the room. Then I noticed something beneath it. A folded piece of paper. I unfolded it carefully. Only one sentence had been written. You shouldn't have answered yesterday. No signature. Nothing else. I checked every window, every corner, every cabinet. Nothing looked disturbed. The food supplies remained untouched. My bed hadn't moved. The binoculars sat exactly where I'd left them. Whoever entered had done only 2 things. Placed the mug, left the note, then disappeared. At exactly 3 o'clock that afternoon, I made a decision. I climbed down the tower and inspected every inch of the staircase. 98 metal steps, every one covered with fine dust and pine pollen. There should have been footprints. There weren't, only mine, going down, coming back up. Nobody else had climbed those stairs. That night, I didn't wait inside. At 11:30 p.m., I locked the cabin and sat on the observation deck outside with my flashlight turned off. If the old radio activated again, I'd hear it through the thin cabin walls. Mark had said to stay outside. Tonight, I intended to follow the rule exactly. The forest below looked endless beneath the moonlight. A thin layer of fog drifted between the trees, moving like slow waves across a dark ocean. Everything remained peaceful, until I heard footsteps, not in the forest. On the staircase, metal steps echoed softly. Clang. Pause. Clang. Another step. Someone was climbing toward the tower. Slowly. One step every 3 or 4 seconds. No flashlight. No voice. Just boots against steel. I stood immediately. Who's there? No answer. The climbing continued. I leaned over the railing. The staircase disappeared into darkness nearly 100 feet below. Nobody. Yet the footsteps continued. Closer. Clang. 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 Each step echoed louder than the last. Like an invisible person climbing toward me. My breathing became shallow. The sound reached the final landing beneath the observation deck. Then stopped. Silence. I slowly aimed my flashlight downward. The landing was empty. Nothing stood there. I kept the beam fixed. 5 seconds. 10. Nothing. Then, the next footstep came from directly behind me. I spun so quickly I nearly dropped the flashlight. Nobody. The observation deck remained empty. The cabin door stood exactly where I'd left it. Closed. Locked. The footsteps had somehow moved from beneath the tower to behind me without crossing the stairs. Then the old radio inside the cabin clicked. 11:47 p.m. Exactly. Right on time. I didn't move. Mark had been clear. Stay outside. 5 minutes. Don't answer. The radio speaker crackled loudly enough for me to hear through the wooden walls. Static. Then the familiar dispatcher. "This is emergency dispatch. We have another fatality prediction." Prediction. Not report. Prediction. The wording had changed, as if whoever or whatever was speaking no longer needed to pretend. Paper shuffled. Then, victim identified. Pause. Daniel Harper. Every muscle in my body locked. My name. The dispatcher continued. Estimated time of death. Another pause. Tomorrow. For several seconds I couldn't think. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't move. The voice calmly continued reading details. Age, height, employment, everything about me. Perfectly accurate. Finally, the transmission ended with one final sentence. "He answers tomorrow." The radio went silent. The forest remained completely still. Exactly 5 minutes had passed. Nothing happened. No shadow. No monster. No attack. Maybe I'd survived by following the rule. Relief slowly began replacing panic. I unlocked the cabin door, stepped inside. The radio sat dark and lifeless once again. I smiled for the first time in days. Maybe Mark had been right. Maybe all I had to do was ignore it. Then I noticed the logbook lying open on the desk. I hadn't left it open. Across today's observation report, someone had written in my handwriting. Tomorrow, I finally answered. I stared at the words for what felt like an eternity. Tomorrow, I finally answered. My handwriting. Every letter. Every curve. Every tiny habit I developed over years of filling out paperwork. The way I crossed my T. The way my Y dipped lower than it should. It wasn't similar. It was mine. Except, I hadn't written it. I flipped backward through the observation log. Yesterday's report. Normal. Wind speed. Humidity. Visibility. Nothing unusual. Then, halfway through the previous page, I found another sentence squeezed between two weather reports. One I knew hadn't been there before. He still thinks leaving is possible. The ink looked old. Dry. As if it had been written weeks ago. My pulse quickened. I turned another page. Nothing. Another. Still nothing. Then, 3 pages farther back. More writing. Hidden between routine observations. Tiny. Almost impossible to notice unless you were looking for it. He won't believe the stares. Every few pages, another sentence appeared. Always in my handwriting. Always describing things that hadn't happened yet. I grabbed every notebook stored inside the communications cabinet. There were 12 years of observation logs. Most contained nothing but weather reports. Until I reached the notebook from 8 years earlier. Near the middle, one sentence. Different handwriting. Walters, if you're reading this, he's already using your hand. Cold spread through my chest. I looked at my fingers. They trembled slightly. Normal. They looked normal. Didn't they? Without thinking, I grabbed a blank sheet of paper. I wrote my name. Daniel Harper. Perfect. Exactly how I'd always written it. I sighed. Maybe Walter had simply become paranoid. Maybe. My eyes drifted back toward the page. Something was wrong. Very wrong. I hadn't written Daniel Harper. The paper actually read Daniel Avery. Thomas Avery. The ranger who disappeared in 1997. I dropped the pen immediately. No! I whispered. I tried again. Carefully. Slowly. Watching every movement. This time I deliberately formed each letter. D. E. L. Then Harper. Finished. I looked down. Again. The page read Daniel Avery. I threw the notebook across the room. My breathing became ragged. No. 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 The old analog radio clicked. I didn't even look. Instead, I grabbed my backpack. Keys. Flashlight. Pistol. Water. Walter's notebook. I was leaving. Immediately. Rules or no rules. Predictions or no predictions. I wasn't spending another night in that tower. I locked the cabin behind me. The mountain air felt freezing. Good. Cold meant reality. Cold meant I wasn't dreaming. I descended the staircase 2 steps at a time. 20 steps. 30. 40. Then, I stopped. The staircase wasn't ending. I should have reached the ground already. Instead, the stairs continued disappearing into darkness below. I looked upward. The tower had vanished into thick fog. I couldn't even see the cabin anymore. Only endless stairs. Above, below, neither end visible. My flashlight beam reached only 20 or 30 feet. Everything beyond disappeared into blackness. I counted my steps. 100, 150, 200. Still no ground. The staircase simply continued. Then, I heard someone climbing upward. Far below me, metal echoed softly. One step. Pause. Another. Whoever it was, moved at exactly the same speed I did. When I stopped, they stopped. When I continued, they continued. Always climbing toward me. Never getting closer. Never falling behind. I shouted, "Who's there?" Silence. Then, a flashlight appeared far beneath me. Tiny. Almost like a star. Whoever carried it pointed the beam upward. Directly at me. I couldn't see the person. Only the light. Something about the beam felt familiar. The way it shook slightly. The rhythm. Then I realized why. It was moving exactly the way my own flashlight moved whenever I walked. My radio suddenly crackled. Not the old one. The modern handheld clipped to my shoulder. Static. Then, my own voice, breathing heavily. Panicked. "Daniel, if you're hearing this, don't go down the stairs." I froze. The voice continued. "I already tried." The transmission broke apart beneath heavy static. Then returned. "They don't lead outside. They lead." More static. Back. The signal died. I stared into the darkness below. The distant flashlight had disappeared. Complete silence returned. Except, I suddenly realized something horrifying. The footsteps I'd been hearing had stopped. Not because the person stopped climbing. Because, whoever it was, had already reached my floor. Very slowly, I turned around. Behind me, on the staircase, a man stood only 10 feet away. His flashlight hung at his side. His Forest Service uniform was torn and covered in dried blood. His face looked exhausted. His beard was several weeks longer than mine. His eyes were filled with absolute terror. He looked directly at me and whispered, "You're me." Then he glanced over my shoulder. His expression changed instantly. Pure panic. Without another word, he screamed, "Don't let him hear your voice." At that exact moment, something far above us answered, in my voice, "Too late." The words echoed through the endless staircase. Too late. It wasn't just my voice anymore. It was perfect. Every tiny pause, every breath, every crack that appeared whenever I spoke after being awake too long. The thing above us didn't imitate me anymore. It was me. Or at least, it sounded exactly like the version of me that existed inside my own head. The older man, my older self, grabbed my wrist so violently I nearly dropped the flashlight. "Don't answer." His voice shook. Not even by accident. He glanced upward again. "It's listening." I stared at him. Every instinct screamed that none of this was possible. He looked like me, only older. His beard had grown several weeks longer. His face was thinner. His eyes were bloodshot from exhaustion. His Forest Service jacket was ripped across one shoulder, and dried blood stained the left sleeve. It looked less like meeting another person, and more like meeting myself after surviving something terrible. "You!" I whispered. He covered my mouth instantly. Hard. "Don't." His breathing became frantic. "Every word teaches it." The footsteps above resumed. Slow. Patient. Metal groaned somewhere far beyond the fog. One step. Pause. Another. Whatever climbed toward us weighed far more than a human should. Each footstep vibrated through the staircase beneath our boots. The older version of me leaned close enough that only I could hear. "We don't have much time." I slowly nodded. Only then did he remove his hand from my mouth. Neither of us spoke. Instead, he reached into his backpack. Exactly the same backpack I carried. From inside, he pulled out Walter's notebook. Mine was already tucked beneath my arm. Now there were two. He held his notebook beside mine. They looked identical. Same stains, same torn cover, same folded pages. Except, his notebook was much thicker. Dozens of extra pages had been added, filled with handwriting. I opened it carefully. The first page read, Day 27. I frowned. Day 27? I'd only been here. My thoughts stopped. Couldn't remember. Not clearly. The older me pointed farther down the notebook. Every page contained journal entries. My journal entries, written day after day. Some pages described events I'd already experienced. The old radio, Emily, the endless staircase, everything. Then, the entries continued beyond today, days I hadn't lived yet. I flipped to the last written page. The heading read, Day 41. Below it, only one sentence. I finally understood why nobody leaves Black Hollow. Nothing else. No explanation. No ending. The remaining pages were blank. I looked at him. What happens on Day 41? For a moment, he just stared. Then he quietly answered, I don't know. I never reached it. The footsteps above suddenly stopped. Complete silence. The older me closed both notebooks immediately. His entire body tensed. He found us. Found us? Before I could ask what he meant, a flashlight beam appeared through the fog above. Not shining downward. Floating, as though someone carried it while standing upside down. The beam slowly rotated across the staircase. Searching, patiently, the older me whispered, Don't let the light touch your face. I didn't ask why. We crouched beneath the steel support beams running alongside the stairs. The beam drifted closer, closer, then stopped directly above us. A voice floated down through the darkness. Calm, friendly, exactly the way I'd normally greet someone. There you are. Silence. Then, I've been looking everywhere. The older me squeezed his eyes shut. His breathing became almost impossible to hear. The voice laughed softly. You still think there are two of you? Pause. There never were. The flashlight beam slowly moved away. The footsteps resumed. Only now, they weren't climbing down. They were climbing away from us. Eventually both disappeared into silence. Neither of us moved for nearly 2 full minutes. Finally, the older me stood. We have to go. Where? He looked farther down the endless staircase. To the bottom. I stared at him. The bottom? I thought these stairs never ended. They don't. He answered quietly. Unless you're already being followed. He started descending. This time, the staircase changed. After only 30 steps, solid ground appeared beneath us. A narrow tunnel stretched forward through natural stone. The stairs had finally ended, as if they'd only existed while we believed they did. The tunnel felt ancient. Unlike the concrete research facility, this wasn't man-made. The walls were rough rock covered with moisture. Water dripped steadily from the ceiling. Cold air flowed from somewhere ahead. The older me walked confidently, like he'd memorized the route years ago. After several minutes, we reached a massive underground chamber. My flashlight barely illuminated the far wall. The cave was enormous, at least 200 feet across. Then my beam caught something hanging from the ceiling. My heart stopped. Radios. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. Old military radios. Forest Service radios. Police radios. Weather station radios. Every model imaginable. All suspended by black cables disappearing into the darkness above. None had power, yet every single speaker whispered the same thing. In thousands of different voices, almost too quietly to hear. Over and over and over. Can anyone hear me? The whisper filled the cavern. Thousands of radios, thousands of voices, all speaking at slightly different times. Some belonged to children. Some sounded elderly. Some spoke through heavy static. Others sounded perfectly clear. But every single one repeated the same sentence. Can anyone hear me? First, it sounded like chaos. Then, my brain began separating the voices. They weren't saying the sentence together. Each one was trapped in its own moment, like thousands of emergency calls frozen in time. The older version of me didn't even look up. He had heard this before, many times. Keep walking. Couldn't. One of the radios hanging closest to me crackled. A woman's frightened voice emerged. "This is Ranger Emily Ross. I've lost visual contact with the weather station. I think someone is inside." My heart stopped. "Emily." Again. I rushed toward the radio. The older me grabbed my jacket. "No. Leave it. That's her." He shook his head. "No. That's what's left." I stared at him. "What do you mean?" He looked upward at the endless sea of hanging radios. "It keeps everyone. Not their bodies. Their last transmission." Another radio suddenly activated. A young man's voice screamed, "Dispatch! My partner isn't my partner anymore." Static swallowed the rest. Immediately another radio answered. A little girl's voice quietly whispered, "Mom!" Then silence. Every radio contained someone's final call, their final words, their last moment alive. Or something worse. My flashlight swept across the cavern. Only then did I notice the cables. Each radio hung from a thick black wire. At first glance, they looked electrical. But they weren't. They pulsed, slowly, like veins, carrying something upward into the darkness. "What are those?" I asked quietly. The older me refused to answer. Instead, he pointed higher. My flashlight climbed through the maze of radios. The cables disappeared into something massive hanging above us. Couldn't see all of it, only the lower edge. It looked organic, not flesh, not metal, something between both. Thousands of cables disappeared into its surface, like roots feeding a tree. Then every radio stopped. At exactly the same moment, complete silence. The older me froze, his face drained of color. We waited too long. A deep metallic groan echoed through the cavern. One radio, then another, then hundreds. They all rotated slowly, until every speaker pointed directly at us. At once, every voice began speaking again. Not different voices anymore. One voice, mine. Thousands of radios. One speaker, my voice. Calm, perfect. "Daniel." The sound echoed from every direction. "I've almost finished." The older me shoved me behind a massive stone pillar. "Don't answer." "I wasn't going to." "You don't understand." His breathing became frantic. "You don't have to speak." Before I could ask what he meant, one of the radios hanging directly in front of us clicked. Static. Then played my own breathing. Not my voice. My breathing. Exactly as I was breathing now. Every inhale, every exhale, perfectly synchronized. I deliberately held my breath. The radio continued breathing for another 3 seconds. Then stopped too. The older me looked sick. "It's learning. Learning. It copies patterns first. Breathing. Footsteps. Voice. Memories. Eventually." He looked directly into my eyes. "It stops needing you." A loud crack echoed somewhere above us. One cable snapped. A radio crashed onto the cavern floor. The impact shattered its casing. Instead of wires, thousands of tiny black insects poured out. Not beetles, not spiders, something smaller. They scattered across the rocks before disappearing into cracks in the stone. The broken radio kept talking, even after shattering. A man's terrified voice cried, "I'm still here. I can hear you." Then, a second voice interrupted. His own, calmer. "You don't need that body anymore." Silence. The radio died. The older me grabbed my arm. "We're leaving." He pulled me toward a narrow tunnel hidden behind the hanging radios. As we ran, every speaker in the cavern activated simultaneously. Not whispers anymore. Screaming. Thousands of people, all crying for help, all begging someone to answer. The sound became unbearable. It covered my ears. It didn't help. The voices weren't entering through my ears anymore. They were inside my head. The tunnel twisted sharply downward. The screams slowly faded behind us. Finally, after nearly 10 minutes, we reached an enormous steel blast door. Unlike everything else underground, this looked modern, military. A faded government seal remained barely visible beneath layers of rust. Across the center someone had spray-painted 3 words. "Do not open." The older me reached into his pocket, pulled out a brass key. I froze. It was identical to the one Mark had given me. No, not identical. The same key. Mine. He slowly unlocked the blast door. Before opening it, he looked at me with an expression I couldn't understand. Half pity, half regret. Then he quietly said, "Everything we've seen was only the radio room." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" He swallowed hard, then whispered the sentence that would haunt me more than anything else. "This is where it listens." He pulled the door open. "And now, I'm going to show you where it speaks." The blast door screamed as it opened. Rust flaked away in thick sheets. Cold air rushed from the darkness beyond. Not cave air, not mountain air. This smelled sterile, like an abandoned hospital that had remained sealed for decades. The older version of me stepped inside without hesitation. I followed. The heavy steel door slowly closed behind us. Its echo rolled through the underground corridors until everything became silent again. Emergency lights lined the hallway. Most had burned out years ago. The few still working pulsed weakly with deep red light. Every few seconds, darkness swallowed the corridor before another light flickered back to life. The walls were poured concrete. Government construction. Every doorway carried faded numbers. Lab A, Lab C, Observation, Biostorage. Most signs had been scratched beyond recognition. Others looked as though someone had desperately tried to remove them. "Where are we?" I finally asked. The older me answered without looking back. "Officially, this place never existed." We passed a security checkpoint. A rusted metal detector blocked half the hallway. Beyond it stood several overturned desks covered in mold. Old employee badges lay scattered across the floor. Most photographs had faded. One badge remained perfectly preserved. I picked it up. United States Department of Interior. Black Hollow Research Facility. Dr. Emily Ross. I froze. The photograph showed Emily, exactly as I remembered her. Blue jacket, dark hair tied behind her head. The same woman I'd spoken to over the radio, except the date beneath her employee number read 1994. I slowly looked toward the older me. "You told me there was never a weather station." "There wasn't," he answered quietly. "There was only this." I looked back at the badge. Research facility, not weather station. She hadn't lied. I simply misunderstood. Or someone had wanted me to misunderstand. The hallway opened into another large room. Rows of filing cabinets stretched almost to the ceiling. Thousands of folders. Dust covered everything. Some cabinets had collapsed entirely. Others remained perfectly organized. One cabinet stood slightly open. Across the drawer someone had written, "Replacements." The older me immediately slammed it shut. "Don't." Too late. I'd already seen inside. Each folder contained only one photograph. One person. One name. Forest rangers. Campers. Hunters. Scientists. Hikers. Police officers. Families. Children. Hundreds. Maybe thousands. Every file ended with the same red stamp. Complete. What does complete mean? The older me didn't answer. His silence frightened me more than any explanation could have. We continued deeper underground. Eventually we reached another corridor. Unlike the others, this one had mirrors. Large observation windows lined both walls. Every piece of glass had shattered. Every mirror had been carefully covered with thick black paint. Every single one. I noticed one small section where the paint had chipped away, only a few inches wide. Before I could stop myself, I looked. My reflection stared back. Normal. For exactly 1 second. Then, smiled. I hadn't. I jumped backward so violently I hit the opposite wall. The older me grabbed my shoulders. "I told you. Never. Look." The reflection had already returned to normal. Or maybe it never changed. Maybe I imagined it. Except, The older me looked genuinely terrified. He believed me. He pointed toward the painted mirrors. They're doors. What? Not mirrors. Doors. Every time someone looked long enough, they opened. A loud metallic bang echoed somewhere far ahead. 3 knocks. Slow. Deliberate. Someone, or something, was hitting another steel door. The older me immediately switched off his flashlight. I did the same. Darkness swallowed us. Only the faint emergency lights remained. The knocking continued. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 more. Always the same rhythm. Then, a familiar voice called from somewhere ahead. Daniel. It was Mark, my supervisor. He sounded relieved. There you are. The older me whispered instantly. Not him. But, listen. I did. Mark kept talking. I've been looking for you. Come on. We're getting out. His voice was perfect. Every detail matched. Yet, something felt wrong. Then I realized it. Mark never called me Daniel. Since the first day we met, he always called me Kid. Always. Without exception. The older me smiled sadly. It almost got you. The fake Mark continued walking closer. His footsteps echoed through the corridor. Slow. Confident. Kid. I whispered. The footsteps stopped immediately. Complete silence. Then, the voice corrected itself. Oh, that's right. Kid. Neither of us breathed. It had heard me. Adjusted. Learned. The footsteps resumed. Much faster now. Running. Toward us. The older me grabbed my arm. Run! We sprinted down the corridor. The footsteps behind us matched our speed perfectly. Not gaining. Not falling behind. Exactly matching every step. Like someone copying our movement instead of chasing us. At the end of the hallway stood one final steel door. Unlike every other room, this one still had electricity. A glowing red warning light flashed above it. The words on the sign were still perfectly readable. Voice isolation chamber. The older me stopped in front of the door. His breathing became shallow. He looked at me for a long moment, then quietly said, I've brought you here because this is where I made the mistake. He slowly reached for the handle. Behind us, the footsteps stopped. Only one voice whispered from the darkness. In my own voice, softly, patiently, almost lovingly. Open it. The words echoed inside my skull. Open it. Not through the hallway. Not through the air. Inside my own mind. The voice sounded calm, patient. Exactly like someone waiting for me to remember something I'd forgotten. The older version of me slowly lowered his head. I heard that exact sentence. His voice barely rose above a whisper. 41 days ago. The pounding behind us suddenly stopped. Not faded. Stopped. Complete silence swallowed the corridor. Even the emergency lights stopped buzzing. For several seconds, neither of us could hear anything. Not our breathing. Not our heartbeat. Nothing. It felt as though the facility itself had stopped existing. The older me finally turned the steel handle. The heavy blast door opened only a few inches. Cold air rushed out. Unlike the tunnels, this room smelled clean, almost new, like nobody had entered since the day it was sealed. We stepped inside. The room was surprisingly small. Bare concrete walls. One metal chair bolted to the floor. A thick observation window. Microphones hanging from the ceiling. Speakers built into every wall. It looked less like a laboratory and more like an interrogation room. On the opposite wall, someone had written a sentence in black marker. Not painted, written hundreds of times, overlapping itself until the wall became almost completely black. The same sentence. Again, again, again. Do not speak to yourself. I slowly approached the wall. Some of the writing looked fresh. Others had faded with age. Different handwriting, different pens, different people, all repeating the same warning. The older me sat in the chair, quietly, like someone who had already accepted his fate. You wanted to know what this place studied. He looked around the room. It wasn't ghosts. It wasn't monsters. It was voices. I frowned. What does that even mean? He smiled sadly. Every human being has two voices. The one that comes out of your mouth, and the one that never leaves your head. He pointed toward the microphones. They built this facility trying to record the second one. A chill crawled up my spine. They actually believed thoughts could become sound. They proved it. He reached beneath the chair. His fingers found something taped underneath. A cassette recorder, old, dust-covered. He pressed play. Static. Then, a scientist began speaking. The recording quality was terrible, but every word remained understandable. June 11th, 1994. Experiment 34. Subject successfully produced external cognitive resonance. A woman interrupted. What does that mean? The scientist answered calmly. It answered us. Static swallowed several seconds. The recording resumed. A different scientist now sounded terrified. We believed we were recording human thoughts. We were wrong. Pause. We were recording something. Already listening. The tape clicked. Stopped. Neither of us moved. The older me quietly rewound it. Played the final minute again. This time I noticed something. Beneath the scientists' voices, someone else whispered continuously. So quietly it almost disappeared beneath the static. Not English. Not any language I recognized. Just whispers. Thousands of overlapping whispers. Suddenly, the speakers inside the room activated. Without electricity. Without warning. A familiar voice filled the chamber. Mine. Experiment 35. The older me closed his eyes. It's beginning. The speakers continued. Subject Daniel Harper. Voice acquisition. Pause. 98% complete. I looked toward him. What does that mean? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he slowly rolled up his left sleeve. Every hair on my arms stood up. His forearm was covered in writing. Not tattoos. Scratches. Thousands of tiny scratches. Every one identical. Each simply read, mine, over, and over, and over. He looked at them without emotion. I stopped writing after the first 1,000. My stomach twisted. You did that? No, he quietly answered. It did. The room suddenly became warmer. Very slowly, the observation window across from us cleared. Until now, it had reflected only darkness. Now, someone stood on the opposite side of the glass, watching us. It wasn't a monster. It wasn't deformed. It wasn't bloody. It looked exactly like me, perfectly healthy, perfectly clean, perfectly calm, wearing my Forest Service uniform. Smiling, I instinctively stepped backward. The thing behind the glass copied me perfectly. Every movement, every breath, every blink. Except, the smile never disappeared. The older me whispered without turning around. Don't wave. I wasn't going to. Good. Because... He swallowed hard. It waves back. The thing behind the glass slowly raised one hand. Not because I moved. It moved first. Then, very slowly, tapped the glass 3 times. Knock, knock, knock. Exactly the same rhythm we'd heard throughout the facility. Then, without opening its mouth, its voice filled every speaker in the room. Soft, friendly, identical to mine. Daniel. Which one of us do you think walked into this room? My body refused to move. The smiling man behind the observation glass looked exactly like me. Not almost, not close, perfect. If someone had photographed us standing side by side, no one, not even my own mother, could have told us apart. Same height, same scar, same tired eyes, same Forest Service badge. The only difference, he never blinked. The room felt strangely warmer now. The air had become almost humid, carrying the faint metallic smell of old blood and ozone. The emergency lights above us flickered in a slow rhythm. Every flicker made the thing behind the glass appear a fraction of a second closer. Not by walking, just closer, like reality itself skipped a few frames every time the lights dimmed. The older version of me kept staring at the floor. His shoulders slowly sagged. I remember this, he whispered. I thought it was trapped behind the glass. He laughed quietly. I was wrong. The speakers crackled again. My own voice echoed through the room. Daniel, I've been waiting. I clenched my jaw. I'm not talking to you. The smile behind the glass widened. You already are. The older me suddenly grabbed my arm so hard it hurt. Don't argue. It doesn't care what you say. It cares that you answered. Silence returned. Then, the thing behind the glass lifted its hand. It slowly pointed toward the older version of me. His mouth still hadn't moved. Yet the speakers whispered, "He's lying." I looked toward the older me. Before he could react, the thing behind the glass copied his exact expression. Same fear, same trembling hands, same exhausted posture. Then, copied mine, back and forth, switching between us every second, as though trying different identities, trying them on, seeing which one fit better. The room suddenly shook. A deep vibration rolled beneath the concrete floor. Somewhere far below, thousands of radios activated at once. The cavern erupted into static. The sound poured through the ventilation system. It wasn't random anymore. The static almost sounded like applause. The observation window slowly became transparent. Not reflective, completely clear. For the first time, I could see the room behind the glass. It wasn't another laboratory. It was the Ranger Tower, my tower, exactly as I'd left it. Coffee mug, desk, observation maps, everything, even the rain outside the windows. I stared in disbelief. That's impossible. The older me answered quietly. It isn't showing another place. It's showing another time. The version of me inside the tower sat calmly at the communications desk. He reached for the old analog radio, turned the dial, smiled. Then, he looked directly through the glass, straight at me, almost as if he could see us watching him. He slowly raised the radio microphone, pressed the transmit button. The speakers inside the chamber immediately came alive. I heard my own voice, exactly the one I'd heard every night. This is emergency dispatch. Everything stopped, even my heartbeat. The dispatcher had never existed. It had always been me, or something wearing me. The older version of me closed his eyes. I told you, it doesn't imitate voices. It creates them. The smiling version inside the tower continued speaking into the microphone. Fatality prediction. His smile grew wider. Subject. He looked directly at me again. Daniel Harper. Then he leaned closer to the microphone, almost affectionately. Arrival confirmed. Arrival, not death. Arrival. The word echoed through my mind. The older me suddenly stood. His face turned pale. Oh no! I looked at him. What? His breathing became rapid. I got it backwards. Before I could ask what he meant, every speaker inside the room screamed with deafening feedback. The glass shattered outward. Thousands of tiny fragments exploded across the chamber. The smiling version of me stepped through the broken window. Without a single cut, without making a sound. He stopped only 6 feet away. No monster, no glowing eyes, no impossible movements. Just me. Except, standing close enough now, I noticed one horrifying detail. His breathing wasn't synchronized anymore. It was synchronized with mine. Every inhale, every exhale, perfectly matched. He smiled kindly, like an old friend, then spoke aloud for the first time. Not through speakers, not through radios, directly. I finally found you. I raised the pistol with shaking hands. He looked down at it, then back at me, still smiling. You've been trying to leave Black Hollow. A pause. You never realized. You're the one who keeps coming back. The older version of me suddenly shoved me sideways. Run! A gunshot exploded through the chamber. Not mine. His. The bullet struck the smiling man's chest. Dead center. The impact should have knocked him backward. Instead, the bullet simply disappeared beneath his skin, like it had entered deep water. He looked down, almost curious, then slowly looked back up. Without a single drop of blood, without a wound, without pain. He sighed softly and quietly said, "I was hoping you'd remember bullets don't work." The smiling version of me looked down at the place where the bullet should have torn through his chest. Nothing. Not a hole. Not blood. Not even a wrinkle in the fabric of his uniform. He slowly brushed imaginary dust from his shirt, then looked almost disappointed. "I told you." His voice remained calm. "You've already tried that." The older version of me stumbled backward. His revolver slipped from trembling fingers and clattered across the concrete floor. For the first time since I'd met him, I saw absolute defeat in his eyes. Not fear. Recognition. Like someone watching history repeat itself. Exactly as it always had. The smiling man took one slow step forward. No hurry. No anger. No excitement. Just patience. The kind of patience something develops after waiting decades. Or centuries. "You've forgotten again." He smiled warmly. "But that's normal. It always hurts less when you forget." My head pounded. "What are you?" The smile faded slightly. "I'm disappointed. You've asked the wrong question." He tilted his head. "The real question is..." He looked directly into my eyes. "What are you?" Before I could answer, the older version of me suddenly screamed, "Don't listen!" His voice echoed through the chamber. The smiling figure sighed. "There it is. The mistake." The lights exploded. Every emergency bulb burst simultaneously. Glass rained from the ceiling. Darkness swallowed the chamber. Only the faint red glow from hundreds of standby LEDs remained. Enough to see shapes, not faces. Then, every speaker inside the facility activated. Thousands of voices, all mine, all saying different things. "I remember. I'm still here. Don't open the door. Run. It isn't real. You left me. Come back." The voices overlapped until they became impossible to separate. I dropped to one knee. My head felt like it was splitting apart. Images flooded into my mind. Not memories. Someone else's memories. I saw the tower. Not today. Years ago. A different ranger. Walter. Standing beside the old analog radio. Smiling. He answered it. The memory changed. Another ranger. Thomas Avery. Same tower. Same radio. Same smile. Another. Emily. Not inside a weather station. Inside this underground facility. Holding a microphone. Looking terrified. Another. A soldier. Then another scientist. Another lookout. Another hiker. Another camper. Hundreds. Thousands. Every one of them eventually standing inside this exact room. Looking into the same observation window. Looking at themselves. The visions stopped instantly. I collapsed against the wall, gasping for breath. The smiling man remained exactly where he'd been, watching quietly. "Now," he whispered. "You remember." I shook my head violently. "No, I don't." "You do." He slowly extended one hand toward me. "You're not the first Daniel Harper. You're the last one." The older version of me finally spoke. His voice barely existed anymore. "He's telling the truth." I looked toward him in disbelief. "What?" He nodded weakly. "I'm not your future." A painful smile crossed his face. "I'm your past." Everything inside me stopped. "No, impossible." He slowly rolled up both sleeves. The scratches covering his arms continued upward across his shoulders, across his neck. Every mark identical. Every one simply read, "Mine. I've been here," he whispered, "long enough to stop counting. I thought escaping would make me the original again." He laughed quietly. "It doesn't work." The smiling figure nodded approvingly. "He finally understands." I backed away. My legs felt weak. "What are you talking about?" The smiling man answered gently. "The radio never predicts deaths. It predicts replacements." Silence. Then, he pointed toward me. "You answered. You came. You remembered. So now, you're ready." The observation room suddenly trembled. Concrete cracked beneath our feet. From somewhere below, the cavern of radios erupted into deafening static. One by one, every hanging radio began broadcasting my voice. Not the current one, future ones, older ones, broken ones, screaming ones, laughing ones, crying ones, thousands of Daniels, all speaking at once. The smiling figure stepped closer, only 3 feet away now. I could finally see one tiny difference between us. His reflection. There wasn't one. The shattered glass around us reflected me, reflected the older version of me. But where he stood, nothing. Light simply disappeared. He leaned close enough that I could feel his breath. Except, it wasn't warm. It was freezing, like air escaping an abandoned freezer. Then he whispered, "The tower isn't watching the forest. It's watching." He smiled one final time, for the next voice. At that exact moment, somewhere above us, the old analog radio clicked. Exactly 11:47 p.m. The click echoed through the underground facility. Not loud, not violent, just click. Every radio in the cavern below fell silent. Thousands of voices vanished at once. For the first time since entering Black Hollow, absolute silence existed. The smiling version of me slowly looked upward. His expression changed. Not fear, respect, almost obedience. The old analog radio had activated again. Exactly 11:47 p.m. But this time, nobody touched it. Nobody answered. Nobody spoke. The transmission began by itself. Static rolled through every speaker in the facility. The emergency lights dimmed. Even the concrete walls seemed to vibrate. Then, a voice I'd never heard before spoke. Not mine. Not the dispatcher's. Not human. Old. Ancient. Every word sounded as though thousands of mouths whispered it together. Replacement cycle. A long pause. Complete. The smiling version of me slowly lowered his head. The older version of me closed his eyes. Neither looked surprised. Only defeated. The ancient voice continued. Original consciousness. Another pause. Terminated. I stared at both of them. What does that mean? Neither answered. Instead, both slowly turned toward me. At the exact same moment. With the exact same expression. Then, the older version of me smiled. Not sadly. Not hopelessly. Genuinely. I finally remember. His body began changing. Not dramatically. Not grotesquely. Almost peacefully. The scratches covering his arms slowly disappeared. His torn uniform became clean. The blood faded. The exhaustion left his face. For a single brief moment, he looked exactly like the day he'd first arrived at the tower. Then, he simply dissolved. Not into dust. Not into light. Into sound. Thousands of tiny whispers escaped his body like smoke. Each whisper rose toward the ceiling, until everyone disappeared into the maze of hanging radios far below. He was gone. I stood completely alone. Only the smiling version remained. He looked at the place where the older me had vanished, then quietly said, "He finally stopped answering." The ancient voice spoke once more. "Daniel Harper." My heart pounded. "State your designation." The smiling version of me answered immediately, without hesitation. "Replacement." Silence. Then the voice asked again. "Daniel Harper." It wasn't speaking to him. It was speaking to me. I realized something horrifying. This wasn't a conversation. It was an interview. The final step. The smiling version of me leaned closer. Softly, almost kindly. "Just answer. One word. Then it stops hurting." I looked toward the shattered observation window. Beyond it, I could still see the fire lookout tower, the stars above the mountain, the endless forest. Freedom. So close. Then I noticed something impossible. Inside the tower, someone stood at the observation desk, looking through binoculars, watching the forest, watching me. He slowly lowered the binoculars. Even from this distance, I recognized his face. A young man, clean uniform, fresh haircut, new Forest Service badge. Confused, nervous. exactly the way I'd looked on my first day. The smiling version noticed where I was looking. He laughed quietly. They already hired your replacement. Everything suddenly made sense. Mark's warning, Walter's notebook, Emily, the radios, the tower. None of us had ever truly escaped. Every season, someone accepted the job. Someone climbed the stairs. Someone heard the radio. Someone answered. Then, someone else arrived. The ancient voice echoed one final time. State your designation. The smiling version whispered, you only have two choices. Replacement. He smiled. Or transmission. I looked at him, then at the observation window, then at the old analog radio sitting alone inside the tower. Still glowing, still waiting. I smiled, for the first time since arriving at Black Hollow. Not because I wasn't afraid, because I finally understood. The radio didn't need another victim. It needed another voice. Without saying a single word, I grabbed the analog microphone sitting beside the shattered window, pressed the transmit button, and whispered only one sentence. Not to the thing in front of me, not to the ancient voice, but to the young fire lookout standing inside the tower above. The man who hadn't heard the first call yet. I whispered, whatever happens, don't answer the radio. Static exploded through the facility. The smiling version of me screamed for the first time. The ancient voice became distorted. Every hanging radio in the cavern below erupted into deafening feedback. One by one, their green lights went dark. Thousands, then hundreds, then dozens, until only one remained. The old analog radio inside the tower crackled softly, then silence. 3 weeks later, search and rescue found Fire Lookout Tower 12 completely abandoned. No signs of violence, no bodies, no vehicle, only a weather log ending abruptly at 11:47 p.m. Investigators concluded that Ranger Daniel Harper had likely become disoriented in the wilderness and never returned. The case remains officially unsolved. The tower still stands today. Every spring, a new seasonal fire lookout accepts the position. Everyone receives the same brass key. Everyone is shown the same old analog radio. And every supervisor repeats the exact same warning. If that radio ever turns on, don't answer it, because somewhere, far beneath Black Hollow, one transmission is still waiting for someone to reply.